Hello, everyone. So let's see who we have here. Okay. Hi, Lucas. I see Lucas is here. We should see a bunch of people coming up. So we're going to wait 30 seconds. Hello, welcome, everyone. This is OpenVC Startup Roast number 6. And we're very excited. It's the first of the year, actually. Took us a bit of time, but here we are. 36 people connected. Hello, everyone. Take a second, drop in the comments where you're from. Are you in Europe? Are you in the US? Myself, I'm in China right now, Shanghai. So it's 10 p.m., but I'm as excited as ever. Hi, Sandeep. Hi, Thomas. Hi, Juliette. Tobias is here as well. Good to see you all, guys. So we're about to start. Today we have 3 decks, 3 startups that we're going to discuss and discover with a great VC investor with us. Well, we have a viewer from North Macedonia. Hi, Simona. And one from Mexico City. Awesome. Poland as well. New York. The whole world is here. Hey, guys. Awesome. Okay, so let's get started. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the OpenVC Startup Roast number 6. The goal today is to show you how a VC investor thinks when they open your pitch deck. So for that, we have a special guest who we'll introduce in a minute, who will break down and analyze 3 pitch decks in front of us live on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And by the way, before we start, if you could please take 1 second and like, share, comment, retweet, help us reach as many people as we can. So as I said, we have 3 pitch decks from consenting founders. So those people that we're going to roast, they agree to it, they are happy we do it, and we ask them for permission, of course. And one last thing before we get started, it's actually unwatchable. The video feed is very choppy. Sorry about that. I guess it comes from me. Okay, so I'm gonna let Kyle take over quickly because I see the video is difficult to watch. So Kyle, you're live. Hey, Kyle.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. Hopefully my video is a little bit cleaner.
I think it should be better because mine comes through VPN, of course. Do you want to tell us a bit about who you are and what you do as an investor?
Sure. Yeah, sounds great. Well, my name is Kyle O'Brien. I work with my partner, whose name is Rand Hindi. He's a serial founder and early stage deep tech investor. I work alongside him as his venture investor manager. And so we work primarily with European early stage deep tech startups. We have 3 primary investing categories: next generation computing, blockchain infrastructure, encryption and privacy, and finally frontier health. So that's really where we're focused. And I'm really excited to be here today and run through a few decks.
Thanks for being with us. And can you tell us, in terms of stage, at what stage you invest and what check size you guys typically invest?
Yeah, definitely. So we focus on pre-seed and seed stage deals. And our ticket size ranges from maybe 250K up to 500K, depending on the stage and the deal. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So I think we can get started. How about we start? So this first deck, it is a health tech startup, and it's called Dynox. Let's do it.
All right. Awesome.
The floor is yours.
Okay, Dynox, drugging the undruggable. I like the catchphrase to start. I like the vision here. Awesome to see that they're backed by a couple of interesting drug development funds, or perhaps I guess the Innovation Fund of Denmark is probably some sort of sovereign wealth fund, something along those lines. So eager to dive in and see what they're working on. All right, so first slide here, we've got the team slide. So this is really interesting. I'm taking a look here. We've got titles, pictures. This is all great. And of course, some advisors and board members. I guess I'm a little bit surprised to see the team slide first. Now, this is bad, but maybe unconventional. Typically, I like to see a kind of a big vision slide. I want to know a little bit more about what they're doing before I figure out who the team is. And the only reason I say that is that, maybe I don't have much context for what they're building. So understanding the background of the VP of engineering and the CEO and any of the advisors, it's usually useful to have a little bit of context. But if I put that aside and just take a look at the backgrounds of the various team leads here, all of them look pretty compelling. You can see the nice logos beneath all of them, previous experience. We've got some folks from biopharma, specialty in chemistry, therapeutics. These are all areas that I think would be fairly relevant for a biotech drug development startup. So yeah, first impressions are interesting team. Want to learn a little bit more about the product.
Awesome.
All right, second slide here, we've got traction. Okay, so high level, slides like this are useful. Gives me a sense of what's going on. I would like to know a little bit more about what the technology platform is. Here it says that it's been developed, but I still don't have a sense for what exactly the platform is, and that they have a proprietary laboratory established. Again, a little bit more context would be useful, but nice to know that they've got some candidates in the pipeline. They've got some IP, which is generally good, especially in the scientific world or entrepreneurial scientific world. And it looks like they've got about 12 people on the team. So they're mature for a pre-seed or seed startup.
Yeah, and as you said, right now we know they have a pretty solid team. Apparently, they have some traction, but we still don't know exactly what they do, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's one thing. I mean, typically when I see a slide deck, the first couple of slides are around the big vision and the mission, and then essentially, the problem that they're solving. So, yeah, if I had one recommendation, I would maybe flip the order here. These slides are good, but without context, they're hard to really hard to gauge what exactly I'm seeing. All right, so maybe this is the big vision slide that maybe we would have started with. And it says 85% of the human proteome remains undruggable with small molecules and unreachable by antibodies. Okay, this sounds like there's potential for a solution here. I think they're queuing something up. So this is a nice kind of broad strokes vision slide. And of course, here's the follow-up. Yet pharma grew beyond $1 trillion by targeting only 15% of proteins. So it sounds to me like the problem here is that we've started to tackle drug development for 15% of the proteins that are available, and there's an 85% gap, which obviously that seems like there's a big green field for them to tackle. I'd like to know more about the proteins that they're going after and how you identify the various proteins and the drugs that you want to develop. But writ large, this seems like a big market to be going after. But I think we need to dig into it a little bit further. Okay, so they built an AI discovery platform to drug the undruggable proteins. I like this slide a lot because it starts to get us into more of the kind of the deeper scientific aspects of what they're building. So we're finally getting into some elements around the product here. And I really like how they've broken it down into three elements: the problem, the approach, and the solution. So I think if anybody's watching and is familiar with like AlphaFold, Google's AlphaFold, I think this is something akin to that, where they've collected quite a bit of data, and they are running machine learning on this data to identify drugs that can bind to specific protein receptors and can ultimately cure or resolve some disease. So at a high level, it sounds like they're identifying these proteins, running the simulation, and then distilling the best viable solutions, which then they can bring to market either themselves or through partners. I guess we'll learn more about that in the future slides. But generally speaking, I like this slide. It's very dynamic. It finally brings us down an extra layer into some of the science behind the product that they're building. So I would give this slide a nice mark.
Let's say it's a B+.
What's that?
Let's say it's a B+. I'm gonna be tough on design, and this is a lesson. So at OpenVC we see how investors open the decks, right? And a lot of them open them on mobile phones. They are in Uber or in the metro, subway, or wherever. And so you want to make sure this is readable, even on a very small device. And so here the text is really small. Now, usually this is acceptable for when you're talking about like deep tech or science. This is maybe more common because there's actually some real science behind it. But the title is readable here. The previous slide, the problem slide before, I think the another one before again, I think here the text I think was really small, and this is kind of the problem statement. So I'm not able to judge the content, but just from a design perspective, as someone who sees hundreds of texts every week, I would probably try to make the problem bigger and more visible.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. You mentioned earlier that mobile view is pretty critical, especially for VCs on the go reading through these slides. I would say one other thing, especially in the context of deep tech and highly scientific startups, sometimes context is key, and I've mentioned that word a number of times throughout the slides here. But if someone's reading this without the context of the scientific background or knowledge of the domain, it can be kind of challenging to access. So really breaking things down into the most simplistic elements possible, and then either having a conversation or giving this pitch, in real life or over Zoom, tends to be pretty practical for getting into the weeds on some of the scientific elements. All right, let's move on to the next slide. All right, it looks like we've got a screenshot of perhaps the user interface here. They've titled it Drug Design Flow Protein Target. So my assumption is this is some sort of dashboard showing how you can run analysis in their tool and predict potential proteins to go after or compounds that might influence those proteins. So once again, I don't mean to harp on context here, but I think if someone on their team was pitching me this, they'd probably walk through exactly how this works. Generally speaking, the interface looks usable and provides all of the right tooling one would need. But yeah, I think it would be useful to perhaps have a live demo on something like this. Okay, moving on here, we've got a flywheel. I think we all like a good flywheel. Let's walk through this flywheel and get a sense for how exactly it works and why it feeds back into the business model, or in this case, maybe the drug discovery model. So I guess we'll start kind of on the top circle here, proteomic guided validation. I guess my sense here is we're finding the right proteins to go after using their data set. And somehow it's filtered or guided through the tooling that they provide. And then perhaps in the next stage here, deep learning driven prioritization, you layer on the AI to find high value candidates. And then once you found a high value candidate, you can do some generative nucleic acid discovery, figure out nucleic acids that will bind to those protein receptors. Again, I'm not an expert in this domain, so bear with me a little bit. And then the final step is multiplex affinity screening, which, to be honest, it sounds like some biotech jargon that I'm not familiar with, but maybe figuring out some sort of screening mechanism to determine which one is best to go after. And then once you have a potential candidate, you spin it out for development. So it's an interesting flywheel here. I can see when I think of a flywheel, I tend to think of both some sort of output and then an input that continues to drive the flywheel. And in this case, it sounds like there's a process that spins out a potential candidate, but there's no, kind of circle back into the flywheel, if you understand what I mean. So let me give you an example here. Tesla, for instance, has their self-driving car, and they have software that they put out on the market, and then users, or in this case, drivers, are driving their car around and collecting real world data that can then be fed back into the model to improve the model. So what I would be expecting here is spinning out some sort of drug candidate and then running data or running development on that candidate and then feeding that data back into the model so that model can learn and then perhaps filter on better options in the future, or increase the capacity of the deep learning model. So I'm not seeing that kind of closed loop of the flywheel, but that said, I think it's an interesting slide. It gives us a sense of the process of how the software might work. Do you have any comments there at all?
My comment, same, text is too small, just like Juliet said, just like everybody else said, Sandeep. And let's just keep in mind we have 10 minutes per deck, so we have less than 5 minutes left for this one.
All right, I will do a time check here. Okay, proprietary pipeline, therapeutic assets. This looks pretty standard. It sounds like they've spun out a couple of potential candidates across oncology, dermatology, and ophthalmology. And we can see the various degrees to which they've validated these assets. But I don't really know what any of these assets are. So we would need some more context here, maybe speak with one of their VP of therapeutics. These graphs, to be honest, I have no idea what they're measuring here. Something in microns, nanometers. I'm not even sure the measurement necessarily. So perhaps this slide is really convincing with a little bit of context, but just kind of reading it cold here, I don't really have a sense for what this means or why it's important.
And this is where I have a comment that I think works for any startup. If anybody here is building their own pitch deck, don't write titles as just facts or statements, but present them as statements that highlight a strength or highlight something positive. So you have like SHP2 candidates. Okay, cool. And so what? Yeah. So our SHP candidates, I don't know, beat the competition or give us an edge, or be specific, not like what I'm doing. But don't give facts, give positive points, a positive signal. And even people like me, who don't understand biotech, can say, "Oh, that looks exciting." Like, aim for dumb-dumbs like me.
Yeah, that's a really good point. If this had said our SHP2 candidates, are developed 5 times faster than a traditional drug, that to me would be at the very least, a leading indicator of something positive. Here, it's kind of raw data on a slide that is not contextualized, and it makes it a little bit difficult for us to read. So, that's a great point. Okay, so the delivery system built on open science. Again, this gets into some technical jargon that I think would be interesting to have a discussion with someone on their drug development team or VP of therapeutics. I've had a couple of conversations with mRNA drug development platforms before. So, lipid nanoparticles tends to be the default delivery mechanism. So I recognize some of this on the slide. But once again, curious what they mean by built on open science. Are they working with tools or delivery mechanisms that are, I guess, open source, so to speak? Is this something that they're adapting to their own process? Need a little bit more to understand why this is important and how it impacts the delivery of their drugs ultimately. Okay, partner with pharma companies for clinical development. This sounds like we're starting to get towards their go-to-market strategy. So it doesn't appear that they will be developing the drugs in-house, but partnering with big pharma. This is pretty typical in the the biopharma drug development space. Drugs tend to be very costly, and clinical trials are also very costly. So the real value add they're providing here is the discovery, and then it sounds like they're going to have some sort of upfront contract or payment, $5 to $10 million with the pharma company. And then a licensing model. So if the pharma company is able to develop and get it approved and then distribute it, they get some royalty on every shot sold, so to speak. But again, would be curious to see why they're setting up this model as opposed to doing it proprietarily in house. It sounded like they had some experienced clinical folks on the team that might be useful at doing that. So it would be interesting to talk through this a little bit more, but I know we don't have a ton of time here. Okay, the why now. This is always a good slide to have. Why now? Why should we invest in you today as opposed to next year, perhaps? It sounds like the kind of classic better, faster, stronger. The numbers here are pretty compelling, going from 23 million to 4 million to develop a drug, 7 years down to 2 years. These are all great numbers. Directionally, I like it quite a bit. But we'll be curious to get some more benchmarks on this and a little bit more context around how they're going to get us there. And then differentiation. Okay, this is another great slide. I do like to know why you are different. Competitive moats are important. Proprietary IP is important. A strong team is important, and a growing market is important. This gets down into the weeds around their direct competitors and what they're doing differently. So interesting to see a couple of logos on here that I recognize. Atomwise is fairly well known. Tandem AI looks like there are basically two primary categories that exist today: small molecule proprietary assets, so developing in-house, and then small molecule where they're doing drug discovery as a service. My understanding between these two is that one is more of like building like a bio company that is doing the drug development in-house versus more of a SaaS platform where you're data-driven, your competitive mode is around the AI and discovery tools that you're providing, and you license that out to big pharma companies, for instance. It sounds like Dionox is going with the former. So they're owning the proprietary assets. They're running the drug discovery process on their own tool, and then they're going and negotiating with pharma companies to get them developed, and then ultimately collect, some sort of payment once they're sold in the market. So I don't know the nuances of which model is better. I do know that it will have a very different cost structure and very different go-to-market structure depending on which approach they take. So would love to dive a little bit more into why they're choosing proprietary assets, how they plan to go to market with some of the pharma companies, what are the costs and benefits associated with that.
And we have a comment from Gold's Code who said, it always helps to have samples if you're pushing drugs, which I guess we can all agree with.
That's an interesting point there. I am curious where he's getting his advice from.
More seriously, on this, this is competition slide, but I have 3 comments. One is that they didn't call it competition, but differentiation, which I think is smart because they don't show who they're up against, but how they're different. Number 2, they avoided this dreaded slide where you have 2 axes and you're always top right. This kind of fake slide that a lot of VCs learn to mistrust, to distrust. And the third one, I think here they're going for we are category defining. I think it's this label that a lot of startups are going after, is we are category defining startup. We are creating our own new category, our own blue ocean, and that's why they're the only logo on the right hand. So I think it's, I don't know what to think about it, but I think it's pretty smart the way they build this slide.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And category defining is kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, one way it means that you're building something that really is novel, new, and differentiated. The other is that no one else has done it because it's either too hard or too costly or too, So it's But I generally agree with what you're saying. And I like the way they position themselves here.
Nice. Let's continue. We really need to get this one.
All right. This is a good illustration of the fact that they have quite a significantly larger drug library than any of their competitors. 1 trillion versus, it looks like the closest next runner-up is 2 billion. Again, don't have much context for what this means or how impactful that is. But if we assume bigger is better, then I suppose this is a good thing. And then here we're getting into the real details around the differences between nucleic acids, small molecules, monoclonal antibodies. This is something that we would start to dig into, when we're doing a real deep comparison between a company like this and perhaps one of their competitors. It sounds like they're fairly similar to small molecules, aside from things around scaffolding. But yeah, I don't think we have the time to run through the specific details here, but always nice to have a comparison slide to orient the investor around where you fit into the market. And then again, here's another one with some high level numbers. I think that's useful. Budget, obviously, if we're going to be investing, it's really nice to know where that money is going to be going. It sounds like they've split it in two segments, 75% towards pipeline advancement and 25 towards platform expansion. So platform expansion being around improving the AI/ML models, increasing the capabilities of further screening trillions of compounds. Okay, that's great. I think that's one of their primary competitive moats. Pipeline advancement. This to me sounds kind of like maybe it's sales and marketing to agree. If they're going to be working with pharma companies, they need to get into those pharma companies and pitch them their pipeline of drugs and figure out if they can partner with them and negotiate deals. But I'm not super clear on what pipeline advancement is in this context. But it sounds like it could be around sales, partnerships, marketing. So curious to know more about that. And of course, the ask. This is always useful and nice to have towards the end to get a sense for what exactly it is they want. 5 million. Obviously, there's no terms on here, so that would be useful to have. Maybe that would be provided in more conversationally, but we have a sense of how much they're asking for, where they're allocating it. Those are all good things. But in the interest of time, I'm going to end it there.
Awesome. Thanks, Kyle. So the next deck is going to be a blockchain deck, but before that, so I have a question, and we have a question from the audience. So we're going to take the audience question first. Do they need to show the exact sum of investment that they need? What do you think?
Could you say it again? Do they need to show the exact amount of investment required?
Yes.
As in how much they're raising?
Yes, I guess that's what they mean. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, typically the objective of a pitch deck like this is to explicitly state how much you're raising and justify that raise. So I guess if you were having a casual conversation with maybe an angel investor, it could be some you could take a different approach. But when you're pitching to VCs, I mean, this is the bottom line. We're trying to figure out how much you're trying to raise, how much allocation we can get. What does that mean for us in terms of percentage equity stake? What are the prospects for growth? Where are you going to be allocating that capital? So yeah, I think it's important to get down to brass tacks in some of these conversations. And I wouldn't be shy about being very explicit about that in the deck.
All right. And so after seeing this deck, would you take a meeting with this startup?
I would, yeah. I'd like to learn a lot more. The team slide looked really interesting. It sounds like they have, some super seasoned, experienced people working on this, and I think they've proved, at least to me, they've piqued my interest in terms of their differentiation in go-to-market strategy for AI-based drug development. So it fits my thesis. The team looks interesting. I think broadly speaking, they have a compelling deck. I'm intrigued, and I would certainly take a call to learn more.
Awesome. So we'll make this happen. But
great.
Before that, number 2, it's blockchain infrastructure startup. So I'll let you.
Great. I will jump right into it. We've got securely.id, the biometric wallet.
Sorry about that. You just need to open the deck on your side. Sorry.
Oh, I think it is available here. Let's see. It's in the same tab, but maybe it's not showing up.
Yeah, it's not showing, I'm afraid. Maybe click share again.
Yeah, I will do that.
And while you're doing that, I can remind everyone here, if some of you are founders currently raising funds, don't hesitate, go check out OpenVC.app. This is what we do. We connect startups with investors. It's awesome. It's free. It's our little baby. So guys, go take a look. And the second deck is here. Is it though?
Great. Can we see it?
No, I still don't have it. I'm still.
All right.
Yeah,
I think
sure
I've got it now. Give me 1 second, and we will be there. Oops, this is technical difficulties, which is a classic for a live presentation. Let's see. Securely.id. Can you see it now?
Yes, we can. Awesome.
Awesome. Okay. Securely ID the biometric wallet for everyone. Okay. You mentioned earlier, Stefan, that this is a crypto company. It sounds like we're working with a hardware wallet. Let's dive in and see what they are offering. Okay. The hardware wallet for mass adoption. For Web3 mass adoption, wallets need better user experience, better compliance, biometry, DID integration is unavoidable. Okay, so what are they offering here? They are developing a user-friendly hardware wallet with biometry and DID by design. So my first impression here is, well, I think most people on the call have probably heard of Ledger, which is also based here in France. And I believe these guys are based in France, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a hardware wallet. It's not a wallet on your computer or in your browser or something like Coinbase, for instance, where you can store your cryptocurrency, your NFTs. It's a physical wallet, like almost like an external hard drive. And in their case, they are securing it through biometric data. We'll find out, I guess, how that works soon. Maybe fingerprint or I don't know, retina scanning, something along those lines. Sounds very, very sci-fi and futuristic. And DID by design. So DID is decentralized identity. So curious to see how they're working on that. This is actually a topic we've been drilling into a fair amount. So I'm somewhat familiar with how that works. So curious to see what protocols they're using and how they've baked that into the wallet. Okay, we're directly into a problem statement. I think this is good. Want to know what the problem is that they're trying to solve. They stated it earlier, but Web3 has an onboarding and ease of use or UX problem. So the ones that they've listed here are fragmented experience. It's stressful for new users, and onboarding is painful. I don't know if anyone here has ever gotten a wallet before for storing their crypto, but typically they give you like a 12 or 16 or 24 word passphrase you have to write down on a piece of paper so you can access your private keys if you ever lose them, which understandably is stressful. So I can tend to agree on the user experience side of things here. So what are they doing to provide a remedy? They've got a friendly and engaging user experience, integrated experience from device to smartphone, no 24 words, and options of recovery services. Okay. Sounds good, but I think I need a little bit more detail. It sounds like the biggest pain point that they are trying to address here is onboarding people into Web3. And the vehicle, I suppose, for doing that is a hardware wallet with a nice user and friendly user interface. So let's see what exactly they have to offer. All right, second problem is compliance. So KYC, know your customer, and DID integration. Okay, everyone, I don't think anyone here is a stranger to some of the fraudulent activity in the crypto space. Hacks, fake wallets, some token dilemmas. It's interesting that they bring up KYC, because I think the whole blockchain ethos, or at least kind of the maximalist from the beginning, were all about anonymity, lack of regulation, lack of provable identity. So it is interesting that there's this movement towards more of a regulatory slant in some of the crypto and blockchain communities. I suppose that's an interesting angle. We'll dig into that a little bit more. So how exactly are they solving for these compliance issues? Biometrics, integration of DID services, seamless access to regulated services on chain, collaboration with next generation biometric solutions. So far, it sounds like they're piecing together a bunch of different solutions that may be helpful for this onboarding experience, but I have yet to see anything that they've designed that is unique to them, either on the hardware or the software side. So I'm curious to understand where their differentiation comes in. I'm assuming that will come momentarily.
Kai, before we move forward, can I ask you an honest question?
Yeah.
So you receive decks every day. You see decks every day. Right now, you're on stage. You make the effort to read all those bullet points.
Yeah.
Do you always read with that much attention and that much focus every single bullet point when you have slides? I mean, from what we see, the first 3 slides, they all look the same. We have little bullet points in purple and in purple and light purple.
Yeah.
What do you think on the design, from design point of view?
Yeah, if I'm being completely transparent, I'm probably giving this more attention than I would if I were off the air. So you're right. From a design standpoint, it's useful. You want to get your big message across first. I mean, this is kind of back to basics. I'm not really shedding any new light on the topic, but you want to give the headlines first, the captivating numbers, the problem you're trying to solve. These slides feel like they might be better suited for later in the deck. Once I'm convinced that, oh yes, there is a problem here with hardware wallets and onboarding to Web3. Now, tell me how you're going to fix it, or let me go into the fine-tuned details around what you're building. So, like the previous deck, there were certain slides that I felt were out of order, and maybe that's the case here. So I don't think objectively these are bad slides. I think they're useful and they're outlining the problem and the solution. I think they might be a little bit too low level for this early in the pitch deck.
Yeah, it's kind of the first step is too high, right? I don't know what you guys are doing, and you're already asking me a lot of cognitive effort. I mean, at least for me.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think that's a fair point. Okay, so we've got the same kind of format here, except this one's titled The Obvious Part, Safety and Security. So again, we're talking about hacks, we're talking about security problems, and the response here is the hardware wallet. I'm a little confused here because the hardware wallet's not necessarily an invention. It exists, and there are leaders in the space. So again, I really want to get down to what exactly they're providing that's differentiated and why it's different. I think these three slides, speaking to what we just discussed, probably could have been summarized in a single slide at a high level that would have convinced me with, I don't know, a couple of figures around the number of hacks that take place per year, or the amount of missing crypto, or the onboarding problem in Web3 and why that needs to change. I think a big vision slide here probably would have been better suited for this earlier part of the deck, and that would have compelled me to keep going and figure out what exactly they're working on. Okay, so now we've got the timing slide. Again, always important to figure out timing, why to do this now. Here it looks like they've listed a number of security breaches, problems with self-custody, and then an increasing focus on user experience, in all of which took place in 2022. So it sounds like regulation, increasing focus on user experience, and some failures in self-custody, and they're providing the solution here. So once again, I think we're kind of reiterating what we've seen previously. I think the format is right. Like, we want to explain why now, but I feel like in the past few slides I haven't gotten a ton of new information. I've kind of reiterated what it is they offer, which is easy to use, secure, biometric data, that sort of thing. I really want to understand why they're doing it particularly well, or who they're going after, what kind of customer they're going after, some more interest in the market. So let's see what they have next to offer here. We've got a business case and a little workflow diagram. Okay, so this looks kind of just like a standard workflow around a business using Web3 services. I guess they would use Securely ID as their hardware wallet of choice. Yeah, maybe this is another thing that requires more context. And typically I would see a business case later in the deck, maybe even in an appendix. We still really haven't gotten into the nitty-gritty details of what you're building and how you're building it and who's on the team and what market you're going after. So again, this isn't a bad slide, but I think we might have an issue with the order in which things are being presented.
Yeah, Jason says, and I think I completely agree, haven't shown the wallet or the UI or why they have the great UX they're promising. They claim they're all about UX, but we haven't seen any of that. And we're supposed to finish this roast in 5 minutes, and we're still halfway through the second deck. So we really need to pick up the pace. Sorry.
All right. Okay. Great point from the gentleman who commented. Okay. Why us, competent team? Just looking at this slide, I'm a little, there's a lot going on here. I mean, I can see that we have a co-founder, we have a product design person, someone in business partnerships. Kind of looks like the right-hand side here is dev team, but unclear if they're kind of contracted out or if they work for them. If we go to the next slide, it says co-founders and advisors. I don't know if these are co-founders of the company or if they're also co-founders of other companies and they're advising them. So yeah, I'd like this to be a little cleaner, a little clearer as to who actually is on the founding team and what the roles everyone has. And in the interest of time, I'll zip through some of this. Now, here's a slide that I think is probably important: the accomplishments they've had. What have they been able to accomplish thus far? It sounds like they built some sort of tool and had some level of success onboarding people, but they're still prototyping the full system. And then we're back here to the friendly UX. So, and this is something they harped on early on. Now we have some visibility. I probably would have put this earlier on to show, okay, this is what we're building, and this is why it's so easy to use. Again, kind of hard to get a sense with a couple of screenshots. This slide looks like some sort of design flaw. Maybe there was an issue with the deck, but can't really read it very well. And then their march towards the MVP. Always good to get a timing slide in here. The one thing I would say is that they're raising, kind of mid 2023. And then looking to raise a Series A in 2024. That does not give them a ton of runway. And with hardware development can be finicky and unpredictable. So, I would focus on maybe raising a larger round and giving yourself a little bit of runway before predicting you can hit all those milestones in a short 6-month span. So I know we're running out of time, so I hate to brush over this, but maybe we can move on to the third deck.
All right, and just so you know, everybody agrees with the design. Let's say the design flaws of the deck.
Okay.
So yeah, same question as before. Would you want to take a meeting, and why? Like, what captured your attention? Yeah,
so I would say I'm more lukewarm on this one compared to the previous one for a couple of reasons. One is the hardware wallet space is a little tricky. There's already a few market leaders, and it's also a very small, although growing space. My impression is that the onboarding the next million or billion users to Web3 is not going to come through the wallets, but other channels. So I'm just, and maybe I'm less familiar with the space, but to me, it's a little bit less exciting. And the last thing is that the funding really is going towards their prototype. I would rather see them crowdsource from a bunch of kind of crypto enthusiasts who would buy the final product, and then get a prototype on the market, or at least one physical prototype, and then convince me that there's 50,000 people that are going to buy it, and then I would help them scale. But so I would say I'm happy to talk to them and get a sense for what they're working on, and they seem like an interesting team, but I would deprioritize them in comparison to the previous one.
Got it. Okay. And for the last deck, we're going to space. This is a space tech startup, right?
Yes, indeed. Satellite-based space weather intelligence system. Can you see the screen?
Yep, we can see the screen. We're good to go.
Awesome. Okay, well, this is a pretty compelling first slide. Quantifying the risk of space weather. Sounds interesting. I've always been a space nerd, so I guess I'm somewhat biased here. But Mission Space looks like they're working on something pretty cool. Let's see what they've got going. Okay, the space industry is booming. $1.4 trillion is the projected space industry by 2030. 5 to times increase the number of launches, carrier rockets, projects of mega constellations of satellites, and spaceports. And okay, so we see the industry is growing. It looks like 2030 is kind of the era we're marching towards, the kind of the next space race. But something that people probably aren't thinking about is solar radiation, which seems to be their big problem statement. It's a crucial factor to consider when succeeding in space. Okay, so we need to get things to space, we need to mine things in space, but no one's really talking about weather in space. And I would assume that many people aren't even aware that was an issue. So I'm intrigued, I want to learn more. What is space weather? It looks like it is solar radiation severely limits spacecraft performance. It's a barrier to long-term human habitation, disrupts life on Earth, et cetera, et cetera. So sounds like the radiation is a problem. Not only are there issues in space, but it can have issues down here on Earth as well, resulting in billions of dollars of lost value. Okay, so we understand the problem here. Like if you can predict and prevent, well, not prevent, but provide mechanisms for mitigating damage as a result of space weather, you can probably save people a lot of money, and people will be willing to pay for your product, right? It's just like, any sort of weather prediction application or weather tool, Earth observation tool that exists today, but primarily for space. Okay.
I like that they rephrased, solar radiation and the whole problem into space weather, because we know weather, we're familiar with weather, my mom knows what weather is, my dog probably knows as well. So, so if that, okay, weather, we're doing space weather, and because space is booming, then, there's going to be a whole industry to build. So it's kind of, you intuitively understand a very complex problem, but there's no science, there is nothing complicated, and I'm already convinced. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Definitely. No, that's a really good point. I think that this goes back to, you talked a lot about UX design or UI design on the slides, but this is like more of like linguistic design. It's really, really useful to not to dumb things down, but to speak in a manner that is relatable for both technical and non-technical people. And you're right. Yeah. Space weather, we have an analog for that on Earth. We know what weather is. I don't necessarily know what it's like to be in space, but when I see space weather, that kind of intuitively makes sense. So a really good point there. Okay, this is an economic impact slide. A lot of big numbers on here, but I think generally speaking, they seem believable. Losses as a result of geomagnetic storms to Starlink. Okay, that seems like a legitimate problem. Satellites are going to be damaged over the course of the next 5 years. That's a lot of money. Cost of unsupplied energy in the UK, if in case there's some sort of issue here on Earth. Okay, these are all relatable. $3.4 trillion of global economic loss if there's a severe geomagnetic storm. This is the one stat that I would question, because I don't really know the probability of a severe geomagnetic storm. All the numbers are fairly big, but this one is really like orders of magnitude bigger. So it's a little startling. I'm not sure. I would drill into that number, but generally speaking, it sounds like there's a big problem here to solve. Infrastructure and data deficit. Okay, we don't have enough, sensors in space in order to identify potential solar flares or geomagnetic storms. And it looks like they're going to be building something to fill that gap. Great. And this is the world's first space weather all-in-one solution, LEO-based network of 24 sets of detectors for collecting space weather data. Okay. This, again, like we have like a comparison here for existing infrastructure on Earth. So I can see, why this would be a viable business. And I can see as the space industry is growing in size, and we have more and more satellites out there, more and more people potentially out there, industry out there, that these predictive capabilities would be really useful. So it makes a lot of sense to me. This kind of breaks down what they provide: monitoring, raw data, smart data, and an API. That's great. So not only are they going to sell like kind of prepackaged dashboards and weather analytics, but you can plug it into existing applications here on Earth. I don't know exactly who their partners might be. Maybe, I don't know, a company like SpaceX, for instance, might be interested in tapping into their API to collect data. But I like the approach. And then we've got their state-of-the-art satellite payload. Okay, so we're moving kind of into more on the scientific side. They're building hardware. There's a satellite. There's sensors. We need to think about how much it weighs, how much does it cost to get up into space, and then once it's up into space, how long does it last? How does it charge? And what kind of things can it measure? And they've listed all of that here. Yeah, I needed to drill into this a little bit more, but it looks interesting. And compact, I suppose. So curious to see how they can leverage that for data collection. User-oriented decision support tool to mitigate the risk of space weather, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so again, listing the value add, showing us a nice screenshot of what that dashboard might look like into the product. And then we're diving into the business model. So business to government, business to business. So it sounds like they could do kind of like value-added professional services for space agencies, governments, research centers. and then more of a subscription model, kind of typical B2B SaaS model for more on the tech-oriented side, satellite operators, energy operators, airlines, that sort of thing. So this is interesting. I mean, these are both like pretty huge markets, and I can see why they would provide value to both of them. Okay, now we've got the overview of the satellite industry market and who they've already started to engage with. So they've got some contracts in the pipeline, companies that are interested in beta. They've got some names here that are recognizable in their partner network. These are all good things. Again, I'd love to drill into more detail around what this pipeline actually looks like and how far along they are in developing their beta product. Have they actually shipped one of these satellites into space? Are they already collecting data today? There's a million questions I could ask around this, but from a high level, this looks promising.
And just back to present, just a small comment I'm thinking in. They call the slide go-to-market strategy, but it is their traction slide. And I was waiting for it. I was waiting the whole time for them. Show us, the actual, some things actually happening. And they have stuff happening. And so I would probably name this one traction just because that's what investors are used to. And it tells me, okay, I need to look at this. This is what I've been waiting for. It's full detail, but
Yep, that's a fair point. Lastly, here we have the roadmap. Okay, I like this slide because it's very clear. We've got a nice diagram here around when they closed their previous round, the fact that they're raising right now, their expectations for a future raise, and they've delineated not only what they've done as a result of those fundraising rounds. So you can see in 2022, they built the detectors, suborbital flight was completed, et cetera. But they also have the technology readiness level, the TRL 6, 7, 8, and if I'm not mistaken, 9 is the highest.
The last one,
Yeah. So we're marching towards something that is commercially viable in a fairly short period of time, which is really interesting. So yeah, this slide is I think is well thought out and well articulated. I would like to know more about the seed round and how much they're raising, what the terms might be, and that's what we have here on the final slide. So they're asking for 1.5 million from business angels and VCs. So yeah, we got a sense for what they're going to do with that money. That's great. Again, I've noticed in all of the slide decks, there's a lack of terms. Perhaps that's just because they're negotiable and maybe they're in the earlier stages. It's also, for early stage founders, hard to dictate terms. Oftentimes they'll go to the kind of the lead investor on the round and ask for them to kind of front run the terms of the investment. But I think it's worthwhile considering or having a well thought out financing plan so you can justify what you're asking for and negotiate terms with your investors. But I will answer your question, Stefan, which is going to be, would I be willing to speak with them? And the short answer is yes. I find this pretty compelling. I love these kind of big data companies that are pulling in unique data sets that are going to be important for industry as we move into the future. This feels a little bit outside of our kind of core thesis around which we have quite a bit of conviction. But opportunistically, like some of these space companies, some of these kind of unique innovations are stuff that piques our interest and we want to learn a lot more. So I would certainly take a meeting.
Awesome, thank you. We're going to take questions from the audience in a second. Before that, Jonathan is asking if we missed the team slide, but I think there was no team slide, right? Oh,
that is a really good point. There was no team slide there. So I maybe in the meeting, I'll get to meet the team firsthand, but it would be nice to know that maybe there's a physics PhD or an ex-SpaceX alum working there. It would be useful to have some of that context because I don't think space is the easiest market to break into without some connections.
Absolutely. So we're going to give 30 seconds for people in the comments. If you have questions for Kyle about, more broadly speaking, VC investing and how he approaches pitch decks, feel free to shoot it right now. And while you guys are writing questions, I just want to share something. So there is 57 people still connected. And for you guys, just a little exclusive about OpenVC. Try to check out the website on Friday. On Friday, we're going to release something that we've been looking forward to for a long time. We're going to release publicly the open rates of all the VC firms on our platform. So next time you're on OpenVC, starting Friday, you'll be able to see what firm actually opens pitch decks overall, 100%, 50%, 0%. So this is going to be fun. I don't know if you'll appreciate, but I sure will, and I hope you guys will too. Now let's see if we have questions. Financials. So someone's asking about financials. What do you think, Kyle? Should we have financials in this kind of teaser deck?
Well, my guess is that, if we're talking about the space deck, it might be a little tough to project some of those financials. And even if they did provide financials, it's super early stage, and it's an industry, not only is the company early stage, but the industry is fairly immature. So whatever projections they had would be kind of, as we say. I would say it really depends. Perhaps if there was someone on the team that had deep expertise and a former CFO from SpaceX or something that really had an understanding of some of the financials, it could be interesting. But I'm more interested in the tech and the go-to-market strategy at this stage.
Awesome. So I have a couple questions. Thomas asking if the pitch decks will be shared somewhere. No, they will not be shared. You can contact the teams if you want. It's not anonymous, so you have their information. You can contact us, Steph at openvc.app. I'm happy to make an intro if you want to invest. I'm sure they would be glad to connect. And another question from Jason. Should Mission Space, that's for you, Kyle, should Mission Space have had something about their moat? So their moat is their competitive advantage, right? Strategic advantage.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think, implicitly in every pitch, that's something we're looking for. And if I were having a conversation with these founders, I certainly would have asked a follow-up question around that. So whether it's technical IP, whether it's a partnership strategy, whether they have 10x engineers working on the API or the software. There's got to be some sort of moat, right? Every company needs to have some sort of moat to convince, especially an early stage VC to get involved, right? Because they need. I think Peter Thiel said competition is for losers, right? So we want to find people who are going to bring this to market and really have a serious advantage. It would have been interesting to have a slide about moats or competitive advantage. I don't know how many people are working on this is the thing. So perhaps there's just no benchmark and they didn't really have to provide a moat slide because they're the first ones going to market. I simply don't know. But yeah, I think that's a fair point. Worthwhile asking something about that in any conversation with a founder.
Awesome. Kyle, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure, and I think we really enjoyed your insights, and it helped a lot of founders today. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And the next roast will be on March 21st, and it will be actually a GP LP roast. We'll have a fund of funds roast 3 GPs. So it's not always the founders that we roast, it's sometimes the GPs themselves. Kyle, thank you again. Bye, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Steph, and thanks everyone for joining. It was really fun. Hope to see you around.